guys, thank you for coming back to my channel. I'm so glad you came back to watch another art video. Today is going to be a little different. We're trying something new and I can't wait for you guys to see what I have planned. Today I decided to do a voiceover for this particular painting with Pennywise and Annabelle together. I thought it would be really cool to explain the process and the steps that I took to complete this painting. What's different is that I am actually painting on a wood panel for the first time. I've never done that before and it was quite a new experience for me. So if you are new to using wood panels, you might learn something. I don't know. Today we will be painting Pennywise and Annabelle together. I thought that they would make a great duo. The paints that I used in this video are Winsor & Newton oil color tube sets. You get 10 colors in this pack. I bought this almost 1.5 years or 2 years ago and I'm still using them, so they last a long time. Mixing medium that I used in this video is just original liquid. I bought this probably 1 year ago and I'm not even halfway done with it, so it's a little expensive, but this stuff actually goes a long way. To start this painting off, I originally drew everything out on a piece of wax paper. Do I still have that? No, I think I threw it away. I did this like a month ago. I am so behind. I drew everything out on a piece of wax paper before I started, and then I used white transfer paper to transfer it onto my wood panel so that all my lines would be nice and smooth and clean, and I wouldn't have to worry about erasing a mistake on a canvas or a panel. That's always a mess. After I transferred the drawing, I was able to just jump right in with paint and not have to worry about making sure that my lines were right or exactly how I wanted them. I knew it was perfect from the get-go and it was just a much easier process. Okay guys, this is my first voiceover and it's probably gonna not be very good, but I'm gonna try to do it anyway. So let's get started. So this was a wood panel and this was the first time I ever painted on a panel. And it was very different because the moisture got really sucked into the wood and I wasn't expecting that, especially using acrylic. I changed to oils very early on in the paint just because of this experience. So right here I am just transferring my initial drawing of Pennywise and Annabelle onto the wood panel. I find this to be very simple, a simple way to make sure my drawing is perfect how I want it to be before I start. That way I don't have to keep erasing on the canvas or the panel, whatever you're using. It's just easier to transfer an image. That little white sheet of paper is just transfer paper. So you see how it transferred very crisp and clean and white, and I can see all my lines, and I didn't struggle transferring with pencil and having to erase everything. This first layer of paint that I'm putting down is actually acrylic. Now, like I said before, the acrylic dried so quickly and it was almost like blending in chalk. It was crazy. So eventually I switched to oil. I'm not sure when I switched to oil. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to point it out. But right here I am just using black and white acrylic. I tend to use black and white for most of my paintings while I'm blocking in my colors and my values. I just find it a lot easier to focus on, you know, lights and darks rather than color, especially for the first layer. I'll glaze in color afterwards. But right here I'm just blocking down my basic shapes. I'm looking at countless reference photos of Pennywise and I'll do the same for Annabelle. Right here is where I start putting in the oil paint, I believe. Things got so much easier because the oil paint, it still got a lot of its moisture soaked up, but it did not dry near as quick as the acrylic did. And it was still super fun to work on. I really recommend you giving these wooden panels a try. I really enjoyed the smoothness. I really do love working with the tooth of a canvas, but the wood panel was really nice to experience. Painting hair is not my strongest skill, so just bear with me on that. And these ruffles on Pennywise's collar. I've painted Pennywise one more time and then I drew him in colored pencil. And these ruffles have always proved to be a challenge. And paint is just so tricky sometimes for me. But I still enjoy it. Same for the puffs, you know, you gotta find your wrinkles and your folds, and sometimes it works out and sometimes you have to keep reworking it. Like this, I just kept going back with darks and lights and it still didn't look right. I think I might even go back into it again. I'm not super sure. I am very bad at this voiceover thing, but we're gonna keep going. Okay, so I'm just doing the other shoulder and doing the same methods. Everything is still wet. This is still the same day. I am just using oil paint to block in, still using just black and white. It makes it so much easier. If you have not tried to work in just black and white, you are really missing out. Sometimes the color is the most difficult thing to achieve, and when you're blending multiple colors together, you can just end up with mud. So now we move on to Annabelle, which was really difficult because I don't think I've ever drawn a face that's so tiny. And I wanted to initially do this painting on a very large scale, but whenever I found these wood panels, I was like, that would be a perfect thing to practice on. And so this proved to be the biggest challenge in this painting. Her face was super small, and of course if you've ever seen Annabelle, you'll notice that she has a lot of little intricate details in her face. She's got a lot of little mouth wrinkles and eyelashes. But in the end, she turned out looking pretty okay, so I'm pretty proud of how it worked out. Still black and white, still oil paint. I use oil paint throughout the rest of this entire piece. If anybody has any tips for me about how to make my acrylic paint last a little longer, you know, if you use wood panels and you've noticed that your paint has dried a lot quicker, if you have any tips on how I can fix that, I would be more than happy to try those out. If you'll just leave a comment below, that would be great. Am I supposed to talk through this whole thing? I'm sorry, I'm kind of running out of things to talk about. I'll just have to wait till I start using color. I'm just still blocking things in. I really loved doing this whole piece. It was so much fun. Anything with Annabelle and Pennywise is just so much fun. And I thought it was kind of perfect to do those two together because they have very similar costumes, you know. They have the big ruffled shoulders and they're dressed in very off-white, almost silver fabric with red accents. You know, he's got his pom-poms and his makeup, and she's got the red bows and the giant flower on her. Wait a second, I did not add her flower into this painting. We'll just say that he's covering it up with his arm. Just ignore that. I'm sitting here critiquing my own piece, and it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? Anyway, now this is the second day, so I'm going in and I'm adding highlights and dark tones just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Make the lights pop, make the darks seep even lower into the background. This is probably one of my favorite parts because you really get to see what your painting's gonna look like. You really get to bring it to life, even before the color. I think I'm pretty happy with how that his left shoulder poofy thing turned out. It looks pretty natural. Again, I was making up this painting, so my lighting may not be perfect for those of you out there who are masters at creating your own light in your paintings. I have yet to learn how to do that properly, so I probably, if you look at this, it probably looks like I have 10 million light sources that just don't make sense. I'm still kind of trying to work on that. That's one of my flaws. I'm hoping to get better at that. So now we go into Annabelle a little bit more, working on her face. She still looks a little bit, you know, first layer-ish. So I'm going in and adding some light onto her face to make her features stand out even more. She's starting to look a little bit more like herself, which is nice. Her eyes proved to be the biggest challenge because either they looked a little too bright and huge, and then sometimes they looked a little bit too shaded and sunken. So that was probably the biggest challenge with Annabelle. Her whole face was just difficult. Pennywise was pretty simple because I had painted him before. I drew Annabelle one time before this, but it wasn't as difficult as this. And especially a piece like this that I kind of created and made up. It was difficult to not have a reference photo to look at for everything. Some things I had to make up. I remember doing this hand. It was kind of hard to figure out how to position the thumb. I think I actually, right there I was looking at my phone, I think I actually took a picture of my own hand and looked at how I held something that I was carrying on my side, and my thumb stuck out, so that's what I ended up going with. And again, we're just continuing to add the highlights and the shadows and make things a little prominent. There, her eyes were looking a little weird, so I covered that up again. And her teeth, I'm surprised her teeth even came out as good as that. Teeth are very difficult to draw if you haven't done it a lot. Sometimes you can make them look too gapped, sometimes you can make them look too solid. It's a very tricky thing to do. Wow, I don't see how people do this voiceover things. Like, I listen to a lot of artists who do this, and I thought, wow, that would be so easy, but no, it's so hard. I'm gonna have to give them props. This is just really difficult. Same thing. Same old stuff, just adding some highlights. Okay, here we go. We're getting into some color now. I think, you know, being me, I got so tired of looking at black and white, I had to put in some color. And you notice that I put a lot of blue right there into Pennywise's face. I love accenting with blue and glazing blue over colors. It's such a good color to use in contrast to the warms, and it just gives Pennywise that sort of dead, creepy, eerie look. I thought it looked good. I think I've actually used it on Annabelle too in this. We may see me do that here in a second. Looks like I'm still working on her eyes at this point. Putting some highlights onto her lips so she'll look like she's made out of either glossed wood or, you know, the porcelain eyes, whatever it was that she was made out of. She's shiny. She's a shiny little demon. That's looking a little bit more like her. I believe I put some red on her lips just to give her a little bit of color. I'm sure I'll make that a little bit more prominent here soon. I'm darkening the creases of the ruffles to give that a little bit more depth, and I'm going into the wrinkles again on his poofy shoulders. Contrast and value is such a huge part of making a painting look realistic. It's so important to make sure that your shading and everything is pretty accurate. You know, you can have, I could paint Pennywise in a hot pink clown suit and it would still, you know, look like him as long as my values are correct, my shadows. It's a pretty tricky thing to get in the habit of doing, you know, paying attention to the lights and the darks. But once you get into the habit, you start to really rely on, the lights and the darks and making sure everything looks right. And it's super, painting is super fun once you get used to not worrying about color right off the bat, or, you know, all the little things that we tend to focus on when we first start. It's like I'm highlighting some features on his face, giving him those famous Pennywise forehead cracks and creases. Going into his costume a little bit more. That amazing costume. I love his outfit. And Annabelle's hair needs a little bit of highlights. I don't think I filmed Pennywise's right hand. I don't remember filming that part. But it was just the same process, just the highlights really making that stand out. His hand is really outstretched, and sort of makes sense for that to be in the light a little bit more than, you know, his other hand. And everything does look very bright in this camera, the highlights, but I'll go over it and glaze it with a little color, and that will darken everything down a little bit more. My highlights are a little bit harsh right now. So that little piece of paper in Annabelle's hand will say "Miss Me," and you know how she's always writing "Miss Me" on little sheets of paper, and it was kind of difficult to get "Miss Me" to look like it actually said "Miss Me" on the little sheet of paper, because, you know, that was the shadow, but fans of the movies will be able to realize what it says without being able to see every single letter, I hope. Now I'm glazing in a little bit of color. Whenever I glaze, I just use the liquid and my paint. That's really all I use. Seems to dry a lot quicker whenever you're using a lot more liquid. So I still allowed for a long period of drying time before I glazed on top of all of this again, just because it starts to get tacky and the hairs of my brushes would stick to it, and it's just nice to give your painting a little bit of a rest before you do too much glazing. Adding a little bit more highlights on Annabelle's face because she's really super shiny. Ah, now his famous red balloon. This was super fun. It was nice to paint something a little simple like a balloon and get to have fun with blending the colors, because balloons are so much, there's so much gradient, and And all that good stuff in a balloon. In this one, at least. I don't know, it was just fun. I can't put it into words, it was just fun. I think I actually go into here and make it look like he's reflected in the balloon a little bit. Ah, now it's the Miss Me. So her thumb is over the rest of Miss, which makes it kind of hard to read. You know, you can't have a nice Annabelle and Pennywise painting without a lot of blood. I kind of wanted it to seem like Pennywise had used Annabelle to gain another victim, another poor child, or grown-up, who knows. If I saw Annabelle sitting somewhere, I'd probably go and touch her, and then Pennywise would bite my arm off. Too soon, Corey, too soon. Alright, I really have no idea what I'm doing right here. I think I'm just maybe yeah, more highlights. More highlights after highlights after highlights. You can never have too many highlights. Well, yeah, you could, but not in some cases. Some cases, a lot of highlights is a good thing. For the string, I really thought that I would try to tape off and get a perfectly straight line, but it looks really cool when the line is sort of twisted and bent, and you know how ribbon kind of dances in the light. It's not a perfectly straight line. It looks more realistic when it's not perfect. And just a few more details, a little reflection of red on his forehead from the balloon, and that's it. That's Pennywise and Annabelle. A little bit more color, a little blood on his chin. Yeah, hopefully this voiceover works. So I hope you guys enjoyed this voiceover. Again, I'm new to it, so if anybody has any recommendations of what I should do differently, please let me know, because I am trying to do the best that I can. If anything, I hope it makes you laugh. Thank you guys so much for coming back and watching my video. If you have any recommendations, please just let me know in the comments below. Also, you can message me on Instagram at CoreySimpsonArt. I'll put a link down in the description and you can get in contact with me there. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you back here next time.